Hello everyone, welcome back. Hopefully you've had a nice little break from your previous video. We want everyone to just take your time. There's no point in cramming in all this information. You're just going to get little snippets at a time so you can digest it. We're not in a race here, so just relax, take your time. You can always look back over the videos at any point. So let's just take things slowly. You'll absorb more if you do. So we learned about the protein amounts in the previous video that we should be eating and how to calculate that. And so now we're going to look at how many net carbohydrates we should eat per day. And really, it's just very straightforward and simple. No matter how much you weigh, we're aiming for an average of 30 grams of carbohydrates per day or less. You don't have to reach 30 grams a day. Actually, the less amount of carbs you eat, the better. You will lose weight more efficiently. But don't exceed 30 grams per day on average. It's as simple as that. Now, when the body burns fat for fuel, there are a couple of great benefits that occur, and really one of the greatest ones is hunger signals are simply turned off. Once you are in the fat burning state, your body is burning fat for fuel, and anytime fuel is burned by the body of any kind, it basically creates calories, which are energy or heat. And so the hypothalamus in the brain, part of the brain, will pick that up, and that's the part of the brain responsible for hunger. So it will pick up all these calories being burned and essentially turn your hunger signals off. You will just simply not be hungry or having unmanageable hunger. You'll be appropriately hungry every few hours, but you will not be starving like people often are on any kind of a diet. Great perk. Also, and this one is my particular favorite, is when you're not eating so many carbohydrates, you're not getting this constant cycling of high carbs, high insulin, then 2 hours later the blood sugar level drops, you're horribly craving carbs biologically to get your blood sugar back up, and you eat too many carbs again, and then the same thing happens every 2 to 3 hours. You're hungry and irritable and moody, and it's miserable. You will not have that at all on this diet if you're following the diet and staying within the parameters of the diet, which means as long as you're in ketosis and staying around 30 grams of carbs a day, you are not going to have cravings. You're just not. It's great. Now, do we automatically switch to fat burning when we stop eating more than 30 carbs a day? No. And the reason is the liver very efficiently, as the body is, stores 4 to 7 days worth of glycogen, which is a fuel source that can be quickly turned into glucose, depending on how many carbs that you ate in your previous life, which is a lot for most people. So essentially, when you lower your carb intake, the body will look and look and look for carbohydrates and will find some in the liver for about 4 to 7 days. So once that is gone, there won't be any more carbs to be found. And so the body will then start to burn fat for fuel. So what that means in a practical sense is you're only going to be hungry the first 4 to 5 days of this diet. After that, your body's going to burn fat for fuel. And it will be very, very noticeable. You'll be hungry, irritable, think you can't do it like any other kind of a diet, except the difference is on any other kind of a diet, you're hungry and craving and miserable the whole time. With this way of eating, until you burn off those glycogen stores in your liver, you're going to have some hunger. But then it will be gone. And it's great. Once that's gone, it is extremely noticeable. You just wake up on about the 4th, 5th day, later for some people, but on average around the 4th or 5th day. And you wake up and you're not starving. It's very freeing, very. Now, this way of eating is designed so that you will avoid the effects of yo-yo dieting. And what do we mean by yo-yo dieting? Basically, yo-yo dieting means you lose weight, and as you're losing weight, the body is also wasting muscle. And frankly, most diets are constructed to where you don't have enough protein in your diet, so you're losing primarily muscle. So muscle determines how many calories our body is burning at complete rest. So if you're wasting muscle, you're burning less calories at rest, so you have to eat even less. So we are crafting this such that you will be getting a moderate amount of protein to replace those building blocks of muscle, so that if you do lose any muscle mass during this diet, then it will be replaced by the protein that you're taking in. So really important not to skimp on your proteins. And also the carbohydrate amount is constructed such that you will just be burning primarily fat. So you, in essence, even though muscles will waste, you'll be building muscle by replacing the proteins. So you essentially won't have any muscle wasting. Now, I'm sure you're all thinking, what will I be eating? What am I getting myself into? Well, your guidebook is going to go into greater detail, and subsequent videos are going to go into detail on that. But essentially, you're going to be eating high quality proteins that are crafted to be low in carbohydrates and from an approved list. You're also going to be eating lower carb vegetables from an approved list, some dairy, not milk, but almost any other type of dairy. And the reason that you won't have milk on your list is that milk contains a large amount of lactose, which is sugar, with 11 to 14 grams of net carbs per cup. So we're not going to be having that. But cheese and other dairy forms are very low in carb. You're going to be having fiber and some other beverages from an approved list as well. We're going to make it simple. You just pick off the list and that's what you can have. You will also learn, most importantly, about some delicious recipes to replace your former high carbohydrate foods that you can prepare at home that really taste fantastic. And the fact that they have more fat in them than you're used to having eaten in the recent years, they taste so much better. They really do. So you're going to be learning about those recipes. Now, this is a general overview of how this works, so please don't feel that you have to memorize all this. You're going to know all of this by the end of this video series. But in general, this is how the program works. Within the first hour of your awakening, you're going to eat a protein-based meal that has added healthy fats that's designed to be low in carbs so that you'll stay in ketosis. You're going to eat at least every 4 hours while awake, meaning don't go longer than 4 hours without eating some small amount of protein with some fat and low carb. You're going to be adding recommended fiber daily, and we're going to go over this in detail later. And there will be a list that you can choose from, but that can include essentially chia seeds, flaxseed meal, flax seeds, psyllium, hemp seeds, a number of things. They're all low carb. Actually, all of the fibers that we're recommending have a net carb of 0. So all of the carbohydrates in them is fiber. Now, a very important point, which we'll go into much more detail about later, but essentially this diet acts like a water pill. And what that means is your body will not retain fluids when you're burning fat for fuel. When you burn carbohydrates for fuel, the body is constantly retaining fluids. You will no longer be retaining fluids because you don't have carbohydrates stored as glycogen in your liver. And every gram that the body stores of glycogen, it will hang on to 3 to 4 grams of water in order to store it there. So the fact that you have no glycogen stores in your liver once you're in ketosis means the fluids go through you. So when you're losing fluids by perspiring or urinating, you're also losing electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium. So the best way to manage that is if you keep your sodium levels constant, these other electrolytes don't leach off as easily. They tend to follow sodium. So you're going to be replacing 1/2 to 1 teaspoon of table salt daily, or about 2 grams or 2,000 milligrams of sodium daily. And we're going to go over this again, so don't worry about it. You're also going to be drinking 64 to 96 ounces of fluids a day to replace those fluids. And when you're hydrated, you can hydrolyze or add water to the fat, which is necessary in order to eliminate it or get rid of it. So fluid intake is very important. We're also going to suggest resistance exercise to the best of your ability, anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes a day. You're going to start out really low, and if you don't feel that you can exercise, that's fine. we're going to go over this more in detail, so don't worry. There's going to be full details about all of this in your PDF format guidebook as well. Your daily protein allotment. So let's say you weigh under 200 pounds, so that would be 100 grams a day. You want to fairly equally divide that among at least 3 meals, but up to 5 to 6 meals, depending on the way you'd like to eat and how you feel. We want you to divide that up fairly evenly. In other words, we don't want you to eat 100 grams of protein all at once, because if you eat more than around 35 grams of protein at any one given time, it's too much and the body will likely turn that into sugar because it can't use it all. So you want to keep that under about 35 grams with each meal. So if you're at 100 grams a day and you're keeping it less than 35 grams, if you divided that 100 into 3 parts, then you'd be within the guidelines. So that's how that works. We also want you to keep your total amount of carbohydrates, not net carbs, but total carbohydrates, to what it says on a nutritional label under the heading total carbohydrates, less than 15 grams at any one meal. And again, you're only getting 30 for the whole day, but if you eat more than 15 at once, you're likely to have your blood sugar go up to the point where your pancreas will secrete insulin in too large an amount. And again, insulin production always equals fat storage, which we want to avoid that like the plague. You want to drink at least 8 to 12 ounces of some kind of fluid with any meal or snack that you have, and add a healthy fat serving with at least every meal, meaning 3 times a day, or lesser amount if you're eating 5-6 times a day. So anywhere from 1 teaspoon to 1 tablespoon. The fat will help you to avoid being hungry, and the fluids will help you stay hydrated. A little bit of fat goes a very long way in terms of managing hunger. That's why, in part, we have such a horrific appetite when we eat high carbohydrates and low fat, because we're just hungry. We don't have enough satiety. And so we're going to change that with this way of eating. So if you have high blood pressure and you're afraid of getting in the habit of adding table salt again to your diet, you can use electrolyte drinks that are 0 carbs, or add dill pickles, soy sauce, or other high sodium containing approved foods instead. But you need to realize that because fat burning state leaches off electrolytes constantly and constantly makes you lose fluids, you have to, even if you have high blood pressure, you have to add sodium daily, or you can become extremely ill and could end up in the hospital with headache, nausea, fatigue, muscle weakness, palpitations, cramps that don't let go. Very, very important. You have to replace the salt that's being lost. So don't forget that point. All right, so important to remember, but don't stress over this. You can come back to this at any time. It's in your guidebook. But essentially, remember to eat all of your proteins. Don't skimp on them. Keep your carbs under 30 grams a day, net carbohydrates. Simply follow the plan and your fat will melt away. And it sounds like it's oversimplified, but that is really the truth. It is a very easy way of eating. You want to drink up to 96 ounces of fluid a day, ideally half of that water, to keep yourself hydrated and to add water to the fat so it can be eliminated. You want to add the equivalent of a teaspoon or 2,000 milligrams or 2 grams of salt to your diet a day. Remember, again, this diet acts like a water pill and will constantly be removing sodium and other electrolytes as well as water from your body daily. You've got to replace it. You want to eat the recommended fiber daily so that you'll have proper bowel movements, and add the recommended supplements daily, which we'll go over. You also want to track and measure your food. Now, there are some great free programs. MyFitnessPal.com is my favorite, that you can get an app for your phone and you can use the web browser if you don't have a smartphone. You can also just simply jot down what you're eating in a journal, but you want to be precise during weight loss. If you do not know exactly the portions that you're eating. You can't possibly know the amount of carbs or protein that you're eating, and then you're just guessing. So you may lose some weight at first if you have a lot to lose, but you will quickly reach a point where you stop losing weight because you're eating more than you think. That happens to everybody if you don't measure. So during the weight loss phase, you've got to track and track religiously. It's a challenge the first week, but then whatever method you choose, you get in the rhythm and then it's no big deal. But do track. Now, what happens if you eat too many carbohydrates? Well, number one, you're no longer going to be in the fat burning state. Number two, you're going to go back to using carbs for fuel, which will quickly make you very hungry and start craving horribly. It will return. That big mean beast will return. In a practical sense, you'll stop losing weight. You're going to start retaining fluids again, so the scale's going to go up. Your rings will get tighter, your clothes will get tighter, and the diet will then become just like any other calorie counting diet. You basically will be miserable. So if you stick to this very simple plan, you will steadily lose weight comfortably without hunger or cravings, and you will avoid being in the carbohydrate burning state. So you will lose primarily fat. Now, what about exercise? We're going to go over this in more detail later, but exercise will be recommended for you based on your individual abilities. But is it a deal breaker to losing weight? No, it really isn't. But that being said, exercise has a lot of benefits for us, but particularly during weight loss, resistance exercise is the best. Because if you build more muscle, you burn more calories at rest, meaning there will be a bigger deficit between what you're eating and what your body's burning doing no activity at all, which is why men lose weight easier than women. They have more muscle mass because testosterone is muscle building. So more muscle means you will have improved metabolism. The good news about resistance exercise is it only takes 10-15 minutes a day, whereas cardio takes 20-30 minutes or longer. So it's an easier exercise to squeeze into your day. Another important point, which we'll go over later, is don't exercise on an empty stomach. Even though you might be fat burning to a large extent, if you're doing vigorous exercise, the body is always burning some other fuel to turn it into glucose for ready quick fuel. So if you are on a completely empty stomach, essentially if your body goes into this state called gluconeogenesis, which is turning muscle or protein into sugar because you're not eating carbs, unless you have some protein on board, it's going to, guess what, burn muscle. So all that exercise you're doing will cause you to lose muscle unless you replace or preload with some protein before you exercise. So in other words, never exercise vigorously on an empty stomach, or in essence, you're going to burn muscle right along with fat. It's pretty counterproductive, so just don't do that. Now, why are we not counting calories again? Well, remember, when our body's in the fat burning state, calories are burned from our own fat stores. We burn about 1,500 to 2,500 calories a day, depending on your activity, from your own fat stores. And again, the hypothalamus in the brain picks that up and interprets that as, gee, we don't need to eat. We've got lots of calories on board. Not hungry. You're also going to be consuming a lot of calories. That really is a lot of calories, so you really don't have to count them. You do need to count your proteins to keep that as a steady state, and you do need to count your carbohydrates, which are smaller numbers. It's easier to count. So if you stick with the program, you really will change your life. Now I want everyone to take a break and relax, and please don't cram and try to get all of these in a day or two, or you won't retain any of it. So just digest this a little bit, relax, look at that beautiful sunset, and basically we'll move on to the next module when you're ready. You've just completed Module 1, the entire module with both videos. So we'll move on to Module 2 whenever you're ready. But again, take a break in between.